All right. Well, I am super excited about today's guest on Accessible. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Today we have Maggie Rollwagen from Abilities First in um, Springfield, Missouri. And we're just so excited to have you, Maggie. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me here today.
Our pleasure. And, really, we just like to start off learning a little bit about you and kind of how you got into the field of, supporting and working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Well, it wasn't an aim. Uh, it wasn't something I aimed at, which I think is kind of how the universe tends to work. Whenever you least expect it, you get drawn somewhere that you were meant to be always. Um, I started out in life simply wanting a job. I had a pretty big scarcity mindset. I grew up in pretty serious poverty in rural Missouri, and I didn't really. I knew it, but I didn't know it. Like I knew it, but I knew I wasn't going to stay there. I was going to work hard to not struggle so hard. And so I remember being in high school and thinking I couldn't figure out my educational path because all I could think of is my parents would often struggle with unemployment like pervasively throughout my youth. My mom didn't work and my dad struggled with mental health and just he was a war veteran. He struggled to be employed. And so I couldn't come up with an employment goal. I just knew I wanted to have a job. And so I went to college very aimlessly, played basketball, um, and just started taking easy classes. Just how do I get through this? This is just another check on the box. What is easy? I'm good at sports. I'll be a gym teacher. So which is a wonderful job and fun. And I did a practicum for that, and that wasn't it. Um, I wasn't just nearly as confident as I should be. I just knew I wanted to not struggle. And so that was the foundation of my educational journey. And so I ended up working for the American Red Cross. I worked for Family Support Division. I worked as an investigator for Children's Division. I owned a gas station and a convenience store with a liquor store in it. And I was also a farmer's market vendor, all these things for a couple years here, a couple years here. And during my time as an investigator in Laclede and Camden County for Children's Division, a couple years into that, I just realized this is not for me. I've certainly learned a lot, but this is not for me. And my sister worked for the Arc of the Ozarks, and she said, well, why don't you just come and work here in the behavioral department in the ABA program and see what you think as an in-between. And my little car broke down on the side of the highway on the way to my first day at work there. And the behavioral therapist that ran the program came and picked me up and took me to Branson. So, I mean, these are like hours drive from where I lived at the time. And I started working in the Branson School District with a couple students implementing behavioral plans. And I learned immediately that my heart was right there. And I mean, I got pummeled that day. It was a physically aggressive person served. But at the end of the day, I was sitting on a mat in a classroom with a young man, and we had started learning one another, and his head landed on my shoulder, and he just sat there, and we sat there together in a moment of, we don't even know what we just went through. We're trying to get compliance and extinguish behaviors and implement, strategies to help him in school. And I just knew in that moment, I went from fear of, I'm not going to be good at this. I don't know what to do. Someone's going to, people don't talk about being physically hit in our field. And as a professional, that can be intimidating. I learned that having long arms was helpful.
Those basketball arms just came in handy.
My arms out, and he could give a swing at my face, and it wasn't going to land. I'm like, oh, thank you for these long arms. This is great. But we ended up being one of my favorite people, and that became. I knew I would never serve in another field. It's funny how that happened
After that day?
Oh yeah, I knew this was different. there was something different going on, and that it's wild because it was such an adrenaline rush to try to protect yourself and help this person, and that their behavior is communication. But I knew that was that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was with the Arc of the Ozarks. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that was with Arc of the Ozarks. They had just started their ABA program at that time. And heck, I didn't even know what that was. And I had my, a degree in human services. I was working on my graduate degree, and they started plugging me in, and they believed in me really quickly, which was really good for your self-esteem and your motivation. And they just believed in me, and I didn't ever want to leave Arc of the Ozarks. But then I was online and I see this social media post, and it said, come and work for I work for an agency where it's a snow day and I'm working on my computer, checking on my families, and I'm eating cookies, and I'm not in the snow, and I don't have to find work, a sitter for my children. This is the best job ever. And I had 5 kids under 5 at that time. And so that job looked really good for a mother who wanted to be a professional and a mother, and could find their purpose and their mission and their work that was flexible enough to be the parent I wanted to be. And that was the support coordinator at Abilities First.
Wow. 5 kids under 5. I can't get over that.
Yeah, like a cat.
That is a litter.
Now
and
they're all
super
teenagers.
impressive. Super impressive. Yeah.
I can tell you that teenagers harder.
I believe it. I'm not even there yet, but as my kids get older, it's like every phase you've gone through, you're like, oh, I thought that was really hard, but this feels a little bit harder. So
yes,
I'm bracing myself for it, Maggie.
Yes, but it's all good. It's really, really good to be a parent, and children and family are wonderful. That's where my North Star is, my family, and the families we serve and the families that we employ. But yeah, I was hooked after that day with that young man in Branson. Yeah.
Wow. I was going to ask, how long have you been at Abilities First then? So you started as a support coordinator and now you're CEO. So
2011. I worked as a support coordinator for a few years, and then there was a position that had existed and went away, and they were bringing back, called the educational liaison. And at that time, I started developing my relationship with UMKC, with Shelley and George and Crystal Bell and the whole gang. Yeah. And that job was to communicate and kind of mediate between the school districts and those families that we serve through that targeted case management contract with the Department of Mental Health, really to teach them to have their voice and that their voice matters, and to work with them to understand that the school districts people don't go to college to just make people's with disabilities and families with disabilities lives miserable. Like, there's some common ground here. So it was my job to really educate and help find that common ground so that the families could be allies to their children who were the advocates, and that they could ask certain questions, and there were ways to resolve problems. And we worked with person-centered planning within that program, and just a lot of education between the district and the targeted case management program. And then after that, my position evolved into director of community education, where we would work to develop education for the community about inclusive practices and employment at schools, civic organization, like how do we become more inclusive and accessible to people with disabilities and help them have this sense of belonging that that everyone deserves, And that was a wonderful job because we were very committed to people with lived experience being the teachers. And so I would work with those inclusion educators, and we would develop out, and I still work with them, to be quite honest with you, but to develop these educational opportunities where they could tell their stories. And we would go through like the disability models, the moral model, the medical model, the social justice model, and they would give examples of yeah, this is the model and this is what happened to me. I'm 50 years old. I use a wheelchair to get around, and people are still trying to pray me out of it, which prayer is amazing. But imagine if you're a quadriplegic and someone's playing with your hair in the street and acting like you're broken and that you need something prayed out of. So it's connecting the history of disability with real lived experiences of these inclusion educators. And then eventually I faded out of the education and they're doing it. Um, so it's been a beautiful thing. We have one of the things that make us, I think, really mission driven is that it's not just about the service delivery being inclusive. It's about the professionals that are navigating the programs and implementing the programs, also having an inclusive workforce, not just the service people we serve. Yeah, we want to have classes in our art program with kids with and without disability. We learn from one another. All the research says this is wonderful, but we also want who you're learning from to be inclusive.
Right. Right. So can we go back to that? I'm super curious about that program. Is that still going on? It sounds
The
awesome.
community education program?
Yeah.
Yeah, community education has 38% of the professionals in it with the lived experience of a disability. And they teach about the history, and then they teach more tangible things. So they'll move from the history of disability, the history of their employment journey. I mean, we have one of our educators applied for, I think, 30 jobs before she landed with us, and several of which she couldn't get in the front door to an interview because she was a wheelchair. She's gotten put in jobs that require you to use your hands, and she doesn't have the use of her hands. And so she'll tell her story about her employment journey and how many people just assumed she couldn't do things in her education journey. And one of the stories she tells is so powerful because it bridges into a concept that I think we should really be leaning into, which is belonging. But she went to a big event that was honoring professionals. Her sister was the professional that it was honoring. And when she rolled to the table had a spot for her. So that's a good first step, right? That's including her. And she watched some of the executives at the event walk around the event and heard them asking, "What do you do for a living? What do you do for a living?" So she's very proud of the career she's built at Abilities First. She's got her degree. She's exceptionally organized. She is very much an achiever. She's wonderful. And so they come to her table and she watches them ask person after person after person, their employment journey. What do you do? Where do you work? And then they skipped her. So we can include people and still they don't feel like they belong, because belonging is personal. Do you feel like you belong? But she most certainly was included, and it was intentional. There was a space for her, but she still didn't feel that sense of belonging. So part of what Ed does when they go in is they tell their stories, because we know that's how we teach.
Yeah. That's the best way to do it.
And so there's other examples of, some of our other inclusion educators talk about healthy romantic relationships and how they've just had so many barriers to that, systematic barriers to having healthy romantic relationships. The Surgeon General put a paper out not too long ago about loneliness, and it's an epidemic. And now that epidemic of loneliness is so hard on your body. It's like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Our people that we serve are afforded the dignity of companionship and friendship and opportunity and romantic relation, those kind of things that we forget about, but it physically takes a toll on your body.
Yeah, that's so interesting. We talk a lot about health outcomes, right, across all the populations that we maybe work with or do research with, right? But for people with disabilities, we talk a lot about disparities in health outcomes and just thinking about the intersection of community, a sense of belonging, relationships, romantic and friendships, and those sort of things being an intersection with their overall health. And some of the reasons we see, certain health disparities because of the extreme isolation.
Yeah, and think about how strange it would feel in your mind as a human being if your opportunity for socialization came from your caregiver most exclusively. Just sit in that. Think about a time you've had to have a caregiver, and that's your person. That's their social interaction. I think that I have a real passion for opportunities for socialization and in an inclusive environment where everyone feels like they belong. That's just something that's on my heart and I'm seeing as an unmet need in our community. And last year we started out an initiative, the Season of Giving Bash, which is a full out concert at the White River Conference Room at Bass Pro for people with and without disabilities. We started out having some skepticism about that from a more traditional paradigm of the community we serve. And then as the event unfolded, the same people who were skeptical were the most bought in and impacted the most, which was a beautiful thing to see. But I think it's the floor. It's an event, like it's a floor, and there's such a need and an opportunity in the broader community. And I also think about how I think we've come a long way with working with smaller children with disabilities and including them. And it's not easy, but I view it as easier than as the person progresses through the lifespan. Maybe we're not so cute as we get to be 30, 40, 50 years old as we were when we were kids, and what can we do as a field and a practice to facilitate more opportunities for those? How much time do you spend as being a kid? 18 years? Versus your lifespan. So what are we doing intentionally to include adults and get them the socialization and the opportunity to be included to do things to build their social capital and truly have the same experiences that every adult has. So we're really exploring that at Abilities First, how to address that unmet need and what we can do in our community to foster more opportunity. I learned a long time ago the heightened risk of isolation, abuse, and neglect whenever people are more isolated, whether it's from their caregiver or otherwise. But the more social capital that they have, the more trusting, caring relationships they have, the more they can be safe.
Right. Yeah. And have overall a better life. I was looking at some of the list of the different programs that you guys too have at Abilities First, and just thinking about all that you do in the area of you could call it, I guess, recreation or leisure activities or just interests and passions that people have, right? Like the arts, you guys do stuff with fashion, stuff with athletics, just a variety of programs really addressing like all things that people are interested in. Would you talk a little bit about some of those? And
Sure. We have our contracts with the Department of Mental Health and with DESE for SPO Region 8 for Missouri Health First Steps. We start serving at birth, both our targeted case management program and our DESE First Steps contract. We start serving people at birth, and First Steps focuses on that 1 to 3 year span. Therapists come in their home and provide therapeutic services and equipment, and they go out and have child find activities to try to pull in children that need access to those needed services. And there's an intersection there with the targeted case management program where they provide a little bit of a different nature of services, but we'll serve through the end of life in those programs. We also have a new contract with the Department of Mental Health for the DD Health Home, which is our Steps Forward program. And it's not a home, it's that that population health we were kind of touching on before, but it's that consultative service that when navigating all these medical systems and therapies and all, it's not a new primary care physician. It is not a new nurse. It is a consultative service with specialized health consultants. It's physician led to kind of help people put the pieces together when there's a lot of systems at play. And then we have our more community connect programs where we have Art Academy, which uses the fine arts and movement and music and all of the things that make us healthy, the things that are helping us to be well-rounded people, to teach those skills, independent skills and pre-vocational skills through the arts and through unconventional teaching. And the beautiful part of that program is it's not in our building. It's a classroom without walls. These classrooms are out in the community, and we have to find appropriate community spaces so that we can be out in the community and be included in the community, and the community sees us and we see them, and it's a group of people with and without disabilities teaching, students with and without disabilities learning, and we're just modeling through education and out in the community, which I think is beautiful. And we're partnering with Drury University for some marketing work. There's a whole class that's doing a whole semester on, they're so passionate about our Art Academy program that they wanted to help us dive in and make it their whole semester project, which I thought was really cool. And then community ed, where we have our inclusion educators go in, and sometimes it's, we're a library and we want to be inclusive to students with disabilities. What do we do? And so she'll roll in there quite literally and be like, well, first of all, make your aisles wider because I can't get my chair through. Second of all, there's no books of girls that look like me. Like, oh, would you like a book list? Maybe we can find you a grant and we'll get you some money to get books that represent students of all abilities. And, how about I come in and talk to them so they know that, if you're in a chair, you can be a professional one day too. Or so that's part of it. Or they'll go talk to the Junior League or the Rotary Club or the health department or some organization. We need, our HR needs to know more information about being more inclusive. Can you help us? It's a hub. And so we do a kind of a cultural assessment with them. How many people do you have? What are you thinking? Do you want a seminar? Do you want hands-on? Do you want lecture style? What are the objectives you're looking at meeting? What is the need here? And try to drill it down into what they need from us, and then work with their core values and their mission and their vision and ours, and combine them and show how they're like, and then provide that education. So they did a presentation for the entire Ash Grove School District, from the janitor to the principal to every administrator in the same room. It's a smaller school, but it's a pretty cool project in rural Missouri here in Greene County. And they took the mission and vision of that school, and they showed how inclusion actually is in alignment with what they're doing, and how we're much more alike than we are different in what we're working towards.
Maggie, I love all these programs. They're so, it's just so awesome. But I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about how your programs are funded?
So we are grant funded. We write for grants for our funding. Some of our programs they have a revenue source. We bill for the service and they self-fund. Others are funded by the tax levy here in Greene County. And those programs are also funded by all the grants that we write to keep it going. We don't depend solely on tax levy funding. But a little about a tax levy. It's kind of a word that not a lot of people like to talk about right now, but it's really important. So in Greene County, the smallest line on the tax levy that they may not even notice was a levy passed in 1969 by the local voters here in Greene County to serve people with developmental and intellectual disabilities in the area of, it funds sheltered workshops, it funds employment opportunities, it funds education and things related to the residential and employment and those kind of areas. And so we do a lot of work, actually getting ready to do some targeted work with you guys to deepen our understanding of the unmet needs here in Greene County, because we just think that local eyes see it best, see the need best. These meetings with our local nonprofits and providers who have dreams and hopes of doing innovative programs. And within the structure of the tax levy language, under that comes the mission and the vision of the board of the directors that are appointed by the county commissioner. And our board of directors really believes in that, and those inclusive practices that give people that sense of belonging. So here's your first umbrella of the tax levy funding, is that we must meet this legislative language. And then under that, it's the preference of the board of directors as appointed by those county commissioners. And then I'm an officer of that. And so what I do in regard to that is try to meet with local folks and see if they're eligible and get all their hopes and dreams and wishes, and then work with a group of folks that then weigh and evaluate those applications and then give recommendations to our board of directors. There's only so much money. Unfortunately, we're one of the earliest adapters of the tax levy in the state. So we're a pretty small tax levy. Some of the smaller regions have larger levies because they came a little bit later. But we do the best we can with what we have.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm not from Missouri originally, and it took me a while to figure out, like, what are these Senate Bill 40 boards and this tax levy? And can you just talk about, like, this system? Like, why is this system? I love it personally, but why do you think that this system of local tax levies supporting this work is so important?
Well, it's interesting. For a while, I thought that Missouri was the only state in the nation that had county boards. And I had a really nice professional correct me one day and be like, that's not true. So they all operate very nice correction. I appreciated it very much. But we all operate a little bit differently. Some county boards in this state do not have government contracts. All they do is allocate tax levy funding once a year and work with their county and their local nonprofits, and that's what they do. Other county boards provide services, which we call a provider, and they do not have targeted case management with the Department of Mental Health. They actually are a provider of services. You can only do one of the two things in the same county. Either a provider or targeted case management. Some county boards choose to have a targeted case management contract and maybe some other contracts and do a variety of things. But in Missouri, it's pretty cool because we are just each county board is so incredibly different. And I think it's different because every county is different and every priority is different. Our county board does not provide any residential services or services of that nature. We provide targeted case management services, which means we work in partnership with providers that provide residential services, and we support them and monitor them. And we think of it as a one team, one mission. We're all rowing in the same direction, and we're working to support the important work in the state of Missouri. But when you're local and you work locally together, we understand the need and we understand one another in a way that people that are not local are not going to understand because the landscape of services are so different. So, like, if you compare Greene County to Christian County, Greene County's got a ton of providers, Christian County not so much. Christian County's going to understand their dynamic of where their money should go and the services they need in a different way than someone from Kansas City might understand, because they're working on the front lines with these families and these nonprofits every day, through the best days, through the worst days, through the chaos, through through government processes, through we don't have any money anymore here, or there's this huge need over here. We're right there, arm in arm with these providers every day, and providers and families and people served. And there's no experience that can help you understand that better than doing the work and being part of the work. So I just think that it's a really cool thing because it allows the community to work together for locally understanding what's going on. And then you have your statewide partnerships and all your collaboratives and your national education that you try to keep. We're not so far away from those things that we don't understand, because the pendulum could swing that you're so too close, you're missing the forest for the trees. So it really is a cool system to have your eyes and ears on the ground locally, but you're also plugging into groups like MACDDS and like Starling, where all of the professionals across the state come together and learn. And then there's a constant flow of information via email from people across the state, learning and growing together as well, while educating what's going on a local level to one another as well.
And just as a reference, if anyone's listening to this, we've also interviewed the executive director for MACDDS and for Starling. So that would be Nancy Pennington and Erica Leonard. If you want to go back and listen to those episodes. But
yeah, and if you want to learn about those county boards, I'm sure Nancy hit those topics very, very much more eloquently than I did. She has a great knowledge there. And as far as the providers, Erica is outstanding advocate and understands that world on a deeper level than I.
But I think what's neat is you give us a glimpse into how things are run in Greene County and the things that you guys are doing in your priority area. So it sounds like if people want to know about the county where they reside and get to know their own DD service board, get to know their own providers and kind of figure out the lay of the land there, that they could, like, do people reach out to you sometimes to just find out what your services are?
That's happening more and more. And I think that that's really important. We're living in a time which I think probably for the last, who knows how many years, everyone's like, would say the same thing. We're living in an uncertain time. Yeah, we always are. Right. And so what I'm seeing is a need now more than ever to learn, because it's easy to hate taxes. It's easy to hate things that cost us money. Trust me, I hate things that cost me money. I'm pretty tight and cheap. I'm pretty fiscally responsible human being and leader. But learning about things, seeking first to understand, I'm seeing as becoming more and more important. The impact of the dollars that are allocated for what we do is so huge. You know, many programs we grant fund are people that just barely aren't eligible for Medicaid because they work a couple extra hours a week, but they're still living in poverty. Let's be honest. So there's so many layers of the support that we provide being important. And it's such a modest contribution for such a huge impact.
So Maggie, or maybe you don't know, but so this is a partnership. Our podcast is a partnership with the Leadership Education and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities program at the Thompson Center, which is really it's students who are getting ready to enter into the field of, we have all sorts of folks, from different disciplines, from special education to physical therapy to we have self-advocate trainees. We have family member trainees. Anyway, yeah. So when you think about, what they have to look forward to when they enter the field, like what are some of your thoughts or pieces of advice or what to expect, that sort of thing?
I love that you ask that, because I have such a beautiful organization, and I am taking over as CEO a little over a year ago. There were some vacant positions. There were some people that had seasoned out, like this isn't for them anymore or whatever reason. And so I got this beautiful opportunity to build a team. And I didn't know what to expect. We have budget constraints. These are high level position. It's almost a $20 million operating budget. It's not small. And these are high level jobs, and I only have so much I can pay them, right? So how is this going to happen? How are we going to serve, 8,000 families across 26 counties that need us? And I only have so much money. I can only get there's only certain pools of candidates you can pull from when you have a certain thing to offer. And what I have found is people come to work here for the culture, and they come to work here for the mission. It is untouchable. And if your heart doesn't beat for the mission, do not do it. For the mission, the overall mission of helping, serving. But my advice is serve where you're passionate about the mission, because that's what keeps you going at the end of the day, after the longer work weeks, after the pain and the trauma, because that's part of it. You're going through secondhand trauma again and again and again and again with families, and you care about them and you love them and you love their children and you love the people served, and you can't shut that off, and you shouldn't shut that off. But go let your compass take you where you can work for the mission, because I have gotten such high level professionals coming from other fields that I should not be able to afford. We should not be able to afford. And 10 times out of 10 what they tell me. I mean, my director of finance was a CEO for Lakeland Regional Health, as well as their chief financial officer for 25 years. Bigger than us, my vice president of compliance worked for one of the largest providers in the state, built out their whole compliance system across the state. I should not be able to afford her. My VP of ops used to work here, left when she thought the culture was struggling, came back, and they all say the same thing. My executive assistant has her MBA and should not work as my executive assistant. She's brilliant. She's a Swiss Army knife. And they all say the same thing. It's the mission of the field. So I would tell all those bright minds and talented upcoming professionals, never lose your compass to where you want to be with the mission, because that is what will keep you through. And if you ever waver where you're at or where you land with, I'm not sure that's my mission, get out, go somewhere else, go where you can fill your cup with the mission, and you'll always be happy.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you. That's good.
Yeah.
So if people want to learn more about Abilities First, about Maggie Rollwagen, where can they go? What can they do?
Abilitiesfirst.net, www.abilitiesfirst.net is our website. We have an Abilities First Facebook page. If you want to learn more about me, I have a LinkedIn page, Maggie Rollwagen on LinkedIn. And shoot us an email, shoot us a call, give us a call. We're pretty open to meet with folks and learn together. We love to, I have several appointments a week, just people reaching out, want to learn, how can we partner? I want to know more about you. I want you to know more about us. What are you all about? And I think over the last year, one of our biggest goals was for people to better understand who we are. We kind of had a culture previously where we just had our head down, just working as hard as we can and just trying to serve. And we didn't have as much priority on, hey, this is what we do. This is what we have to offer. And we've learned that that's just as important, because people can't access you to serve them if they don't understand what it is you have to offer them or how you can help them plan for the future, or advocate for themselves, And that starts at a very early age. And that's why we're very passionate about that early intervention, because you really can't start working with families and people served early enough, teaching them about their choice and the possibility of life. So come to our website, check me out on LinkedIn if you want to connect. And if you want to see what's going on, our social media is always a good place to go. And if you're looking for a job, there might be some opportunities on there as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Maggie. This is great. You've been just an amazing guest, as I knew you would be.
Oh, well, you're too kind, George. Too kind. And I appreciate all you've done for me over the years. It's been many years of learning and growing with UMKC, who kind of opened my mind to my next level of education in the field after I was a support coordinator for several years, coming and being involved in those stakeholder meetings and in development with Shelley and your team, just always challenging me to think a little bit deeper. And I owe you guys a lot of credit for my professional journey and the things that I do on a daily basis, coming from rooted in that life course framework that I used to wear it all over. It's just printed out everywhere, like plastered. And now it's all in everything we do. It's still, it's around, but it's different. It's not saccharine. It's inherent in what we do. It's embedded in how we plan and how we write plans. And I just thank you guys for that. That was really a wonderful part of my journey.
Well, thank you.